People only invite you because of me. On your own, you're forgettable. My daughter said it the way someone states the weather. Calm, certain, almost helpful. No anger, no edge. Just a conclusion she seemed to have reached long before saying it out loud. I answered. Good to know. That was it. No argument followed. No raised voices. The silence that came after felt heavier than if we had fought. Because nothing in her tone suggested cruelty. It sounded like truth. The kind people think you should be grateful to hear. My name is Callista Monroe. I am 52. I raised my daughter mostly on my own in Madison. I taught her to speak clearly, to take up space, to walk into rooms without apologizing. Somewhere along the way, I started doing the opposite. I stood slightly behind her at gatherings. Let her handle introductions. Let her finish stories I had started. It felt natural. She was younger, brighter, more confident. I told myself that was what support looked like. That night, as we sat side by side, I realized how easily support can turn into disappearance. She went on scrolling through her phone, already done with the moment. I kept my eyes forward, noticing how quickly I accepted what she said without checking it against my own life. I tried to remember the last time I had been invited somewhere directly, not as an extension, not as an afterthought. At home, I replayed her sentence while washing dishes, while folding laundry, while lying awake. It didn't echo loudly. It settled quietly, like dust. By morning, I understood something about myself that made my chest feel tight and steady at the same time. I did not want to defend myself. I wanted to know if she was right. So that week, when she picked up her keys and asked if I was ready to go, I stayed seated. I told her I would sit this one out. She barely looked back as she closed the door. It didn't start with that sentence. It started earlier. In small moments I barely noticed at the time. At dinners, my daughter would step in first. "This is my mom," she'd say. Already turning the conversation toward herself, I'd smile and nod, waiting for my turn that rarely came. When I spoke, she interrupted without looking at me. "Mom's being modest." She'd laugh, filling in details I hadn't finished. People listened to her. I let them. Once, a woman across the table asked, "What do you do, Callista?" Before I could answer, my daughter said, "She keeps busy. I'm the one with the interesting work stories." I smiled again. I didn't correct her. On the drive home, I mentioned it gently. "You talked over me tonight." She shrugged. "I was helping. You freeze up in groups." I believed her. After that, I spoke less. I learned when to pause, when to hand conversations back to her before they drifted away from her orbit. It felt like support. It felt like love. At another gathering, someone thanked her for bringing me along. She laughed. "Yeah, she wouldn't come if I didn't drag her." I laughed too, because that's what kept things smooth. What I didn't see was how often I stopped correcting the story, how often I let her define who I was in rooms that weren't ours. By the time she told me I was forgettable, the shape of that belief was already familiar. She waited for a reaction after she said it. I could feel that pause, the small space she left for disagreement. I didn't give it to her. "Good to know," I said, keeping my voice even. She frowned. "That's it. That's it." She studied my face, like she was checking whether I was joking. "I didn't mean it to be harsh." She added, "I'm just being honest. I heard you." I said, "Honesty. I thought, doesn't always sound brave, sometimes it just sounds final." She went back to her phone, already moving on. The conversation was over for her. For me, it stayed open, sitting quietly between my ribs. I didn't feel angry. I felt careful, like any sudden movement might turn the hurt into something louder. Later that night, she mentioned an upcoming dinner. "We're meeting a few people on Thursday." She said, "You should come. It'll be easier." Easier for who wasn't said. I'll see, I replied. She looked up. You always say that. I nodded. I know. That was the first time I noticed how often I softened my answers to keep things from shifting, how often I chose neutral words so no one would accuse me of making a scene. In bed, I replayed her sentence without the sting attached to it. I stripped it down to its shape. People only invite you because of me, on your own. You're forgettable. If that was true, then arguing wouldn't change it. Defending myself wouldn't either. If it wasn't true, then I didn't need to fight at all. The thought settled slowly, not as anger, but as something steadier. I didn't want to prove her wrong with words. I wanted to know what happened without me there. The first invitation came 2 days later. We're having dinner with a few people on Wednesday. My daughter said, standing by the door, "You'll come, right?" I stayed seated. "I'm not going." She paused. "Why not?" I kept my voice calm. "You said people only invite me because of you." I figured I'd make things simpler. She laughed once, sharp and surprised. "That's not what I meant." "I know," I said, "but it's what you said." Her smile faded. "You're taking this too literally." "I don't think I am." She crossed her arms. "So you're just going to stay home now?" "Not now," I said. "Tonight." She looked at me like she was deciding whether this was worth pushing. "Fine," she said finally. "Do whatever you want." The door closed harder than usual. She went alone that night. When she came back, she was louder than she needed to be, setting her bag down, moving through the kitchen like noise might fill whatever was missing. I didn't ask how it went. She didn't offer. 2 days later, she tried again. "Rebecca's hosting something on Friday," she said. "You should come this time." I shook my head. "I won't." Her voice sharpened. "You're doing this on purpose." "I'm listening," I replied. She stared at me. "So you're punishing me now I'm respecting you," I said. "You told me where I fit." That stopped her. She left again. This time, she came home quieter. She didn't look at me as she passed. I noticed how the apartment felt when I didn't follow her out the door. Not empty, just still. By the end of the week, she had stopped asking if I was coming, and I realized how easily my absence had become part of the plan. She left early that Saturday, dressed more carefully than usual. "Big group today," she said, checking her phone. "Don't wait up." "I won't," I replied. She hesitated by the door. "You could still come." "I'm fine here," I said. She didn't answer. The door closed softly this time. She was gone for hours. When she came back, her energy felt off. Like she was carrying something she hadn't planned to pick up. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said too quickly. "Why wouldn't it be? I let that sit." She dropped her bag on the chair. "People kept asking about you." I looked up. "What did you tell them? That you were busy?" she said. "Work stuff." I nodded. "And that was enough." She shrugged. "It should have been." Later that night, she paced the kitchen while I read. It was weird. She said the conversations just stalled. Stalled how she exhaled. Like everyone was talking, but nothing was landing. I kept jumping in, filling space. "That sounds tiring," I said. She frowned. "I don't need commentary." I wasn't giving any. She stopped pacing. "They kept bringing you up," she said. "Little things, asking if you'd finished that book, if you were still baking on weekends. Stuff like that." I waited. One of them said the room felt quieter. She added, "Not bad, just different." She looked at me then, searching my face for something I didn't offer. "You don't seem surprised," she said. "I didn't say I was," I replied. She laughed, short and uneasy. "You always notice things. That's your thing." I closed my book. "You used to call it listening." She didn't respond. Over the next few days, I heard pieces of her world shift without being invited into them. A canceled plan, a shorter message, an invitation that ended earlier than expected. She started checking her phone more often when she got home. Started asking, "Are you busy tonight?" without explaining why. I stayed where I was. By midweek, she stopped pretending nothing had changed. She just didn't know yet what it meant. She came home earlier than expected. I heard the door close, then reopen, like she'd forgotten something. When she finally stepped into the living room, her face looked different, not upset, not angry, just stripped of something. It was a small group. She said, "Not a big thing." I nodded. "Did you have fun?" She sat down slowly. Jen pulled me aside. That name landed between us. Jen had been in her life for years, close enough to tell the truth without dressing it up. She asked where you were. My daughter said, "I told her you were busy." I stayed quiet. She didn't argue. She continued. She just said, "People had been asking about you all night." I looked at her. "About me?" She swallowed. Not in a polite way, in a noticing way. She rubbed her hands together like she was cold. She said the room felt off without you, that conversations didn't settle, that people kept waiting for someone to finish a thought the way you do. I said nothing. She asked if I'd said something to make you stop coming. Her voice dropped. She asked if I'd made you feel unwelcome. That was when her eyes finally met mine. I told her no. She said quickly, "I told her you were just tired." And I asked. She didn't believe me. The silence stretched. She filled it again. Slower this time. She said people don't tolerate you. They relax around you. That you make them feel like they're allowed to exist without performing. I leaned back in my chair. She said, my daughter went on, that when you're there, I listen more, that I interrupt less, that I'm easier to be around. Her voice cracked on the last word. She said they've noticed for a while. She added, they just didn't know how to say it. I watched the certainty drain from her posture. The confidence she wore so easily all her life had nowhere to sit. She asked me, my daughter said quietly, why I thought people only invited you because of me. I didn't answer. I let the question stay where it belonged. She stared at the floor. I didn't know what to say. After a moment, she looked up again. They like you, she said. They always have. The room felt still, like something had finally landed. She pressed her lips together, holding back whatever came next. I think, she said, barely audible. I got it wrong. The days after that felt uneven, like the ground had shifted but hadn't settled yet. She moved through the apartment differently, quieter, then suddenly sharp. It was just one person, she said the next morning, standing at the counter. Jen doesn't speak for everyone. I didn't say she did. I replied. My calm seemed to irritate her more than anger would have. You're acting like this proves something. I'm not acting. I said, I'm listening. She scoffed. You always do that. Sit there like you're above it. I looked up. I'm not above anything. She turned away, jaw tight. People exaggerate when they're being nice. Sometimes, I said. She slammed a cabinet door. You're enjoying this. That stung more than the original sentence. I'm not, I said quietly. I didn't ask for any of it. She didn't answer. She grabbed her keys and left, then came back an hour later without explaining where she'd gone. When she sat down, her phone stayed dark in her hand. They invited me again, she said finally. Another dinner. I waited. They asked if you were coming, she added. Specifically, I met her eyes. What did you say? She hesitated. I said I didn't know. That uncertainty sounded new on her, that evening. She tried to joke. Guess I'm not as charming alone as I thought. I didn't laugh. You don't have to be charming. She rubbed her face. That's easy for you to say. Why, I asked. She opened her mouth, then closed it. The silence stretched until it felt heavy enough to break something. I don't know who I am in those rooms without you, she said finally. I let that land. I didn't rush to comfort her. I didn't correct her. I stayed where I was. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was seeing the distance between us for the first time. I need time, she said. I know, I replied. She nodded once and went to her room, closing the door gently. I stayed seated, aware that something important had cracked, and that whatever came next would require more than words. She came to me that night without her phone. She sat across from me at the table and didn't speak right away. Her hands were folded, tight, like she was holding something in place. I need to say something, she said, and I don't want you to fix it. I won't, I replied. She nodded once. I was scared. I waited. I've always been the one people noticed first, she said. The loud one, the impressive one. Her mouth twisted. That's how I know I matter. I stayed quiet. When you were there, she continued, people listened to you differently. They relaxed. They remembered things. And I started to feel replaceable. She looked down. I didn't know how to sit with that. I felt the weight of her words settle. Not sharply, but deeply. So I told myself a story, she said, that people came because of me, that you were just there with me. She swallowed. If that was true, then I was safe. And if it wasn't, I asked. Her voice dropped. Then maybe I wasn't special. The word special sounded small when she said it. I didn't mean to make you smaller, she said quickly. I just didn't know how else to stay big. I exhaled slowly. You didn't just say it once. She flinched. I know. You said it in jokes. I went on, in introductions, in the way you spoke for me. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I know, she said again. I thought if I said it often enough, it would feel true. It did. I said, that landed harder than anything else. She pressed her lips together, nodding. I'm sorry, she said, not because people noticed, but because I needed you not to. The honesty in that hurt, but it was clean. No excuses, no softening. I don't hate you, I said, but I don't know how to unlearn what I learned. She leaned back, like the chair suddenly needed to hold more weight. I don't know how to be in rooms without measuring myself against you, she admitted. I don't know how to be ordinary. You're not ordinary. I said, you're just not alone anymore. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was seeing both the cost and the truth at once. I don't want to lose you, she said. I'm still here, I replied. Just not where you left me. She nodded, tears finally slipping free. And for the first time since this began, she didn't try to wipe them away. Things shifted after that, but they didn't return. She tried. I saw it in the way she paused before speaking, in the way she waited instead of stepping in. When we sat with friends, she asked, do you want to tell them, and meant it? I answered sometimes. Other times, I shook my head. I'm working on it, she said one night, standing in the doorway. I don't want to be that person anymore. I believe you, I replied. Belief didn't erase the pause that came before my words now, the way I checked myself before speaking, making sure I wasn't taking up too much space. I noticed it when someone asked me a question and I glanced at her first. Out of habit. Go ahead, she said gently. I'm listening. I did. My voice sounded steadier than it felt. Invitations started arriving again. Some addressed both of us. Some didn't. When my name appeared alone on a message, I felt a quiet tightening in my chest. They asked for you, she said once, handing me her phone. Not us. I know, I said. She nodded. That used to scare me. And now I asked. She exhaled. Now it just feels honest. We talked more carefully. Apologies came without performance. She didn't rush me toward forgiveness or pretend understanding fixed everything. Still, there were moments that surprised us both. I'd stop mid-sentence, unsure. She'd notice and say nothing. giving me room instead of reassurance. This part is slower, she admitted one evening. I didn't think it would be. Some things don't reset, I said. She sat beside me. Not touching, not pulling away. I don't want us to go back, she said. I want us to be real. I looked at her, seeing both the effort and the space that remained. We are, I said, just differently. The distance wasn't a wall, it was a line we both learned not to cross without asking. The first invitation came with only my name on it. Dinner next Thursday. The message read, "We'd really like you there." I showed it to my daughter. She studied the screen, then handed the phone back. "You should go," she said. No hesitation, no edge. "I plan to," I replied. I went alone. I arrived alone, and no one looked surprised. Someone pulled out a chair for me. Someone asked how my baking was going. Someone else said, "I'm glad you came," like it had always been expected. When I got home, my daughter was on the couch. "How was it?" she asked. "Easy," I said. That surprised me. She nodded slowly. It shouldn't have. We learned how to speak to each other after that, more carefully, more honestly. She didn't introduce me anymore. I introduced myself. When we went somewhere together, we arrived as two people, not a pair with a hierarchy. One evening, she said, "You seem lighter. I'm not carrying what isn't mine anymore." I answered, that was the truth. Here's the lesson I carried out of this. And I carry it quietly. Love doesn't require you to disappear. Support doesn't mean shrinking. And being present has more weight than being impressive ever will. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like it, share it, or leave a comment. Someone reading might need to hear it the same way I needed to live it. My daughter and I still talk. We still show up for each other, just not in the old shape. And for the first time in a long while, the space I take up feels honest.